Tae-jin stood at attention in the briefing room, his dark uniform crisp and spotless. The metal walls of Earth's orbital station reflected the cold light from the viewing screen. He had been a security officer for 8 years, and this assignment felt wrong from the start. "You will protect Princess Ji-woo during the diplomatic mission to the Kryn homeworld," Commander Park said, sliding a data tablet across the table. "Ambassador Sung-ho will lead the negotiations, but your only job is to keep the princess safe." Tae-jin picked up the tablet and scanned the information. The Kryn Empire, a warrior race that controlled 15 star systems. They valued strength above everything else and saw humans as weak newcomers to the galaxy. Earth had only joined the Galactic Coalition 3 years ago, and most species still looked down on humanity. "Sir, with respect, I'm a combat specialist," Tae-jin said. "Wouldn't a diplomatic security team be better suited for this?" Commander Park shook his head. "The Kryn respect warriors. They need to see that we take their culture seriously. You have the best combat record in the division. That's why you were chosen." 2 days later, Tae-jin found himself on a transport ship heading toward Kryn space. Princess Ji-woo sat across from him in the passenger compartment, reading through diplomatic files on her portable screen. She was 24 years old, the youngest daughter of Earth's Unified Council, and she had a reputation for being stubborn. Ambassador Sung-ho, a gray-haired man in his 60s, sat beside her reviewing the same files. He had been a diplomat for 30 years and had helped negotiate Earth's entry into the coalition. "Officer Tae-jin," Ji-woo said without looking up from her screen, "I understand you didn't want this assignment." Tae-jin kept his expression neutral. "My preferences don't matter, Princess. I follow orders." "Good," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "Because I didn't want a bodyguard at all. But my father insisted, so here we are. Just stay out of my way during the negotiations." Ambassador Sung-ho cleared his throat. "Princess, Officer Tae-jin is here for your protection. The Kryn can be unpredictable." "The Kryn are warriors who value honor," Ji-woo replied. "They won't harm a diplomatic guest." Tae-jin said nothing, but he had read the reports. The Kryn had killed ambassadors before when they felt disrespected. Honor meant something different to them than it did to humans. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 hours later. Through the viewport, Tae-jin could see the Kryn homeworld. It was a red planet, larger than Earth, covered in massive mountain ranges and dark oceans. Hundreds of warships orbited above it, each one bristling with weapons. "Impressive," Ambassador Sung-ho said quietly. A Kryn patrol ship intercepted them and guided their transport to the surface. The landing platform was carved from black stone, surrounded by towers that stretched toward the red sky. Kryn soldiers lined the platform, each one standing over 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. They wore armor made from a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Tae-jin stepped off the transport first, his hand near the plasma pistol on his hip. He scanned the area, noting exits and potential threats. The air was thin and hot, and gravity was slightly higher than Earth's. Princess Ji-woo and Ambassador Sung-ho followed him down the ramp. A group of Kryn officials approached, led by a massive figure wearing ceremonial armor decorated with golden symbols. "Humans," the figure said in heavily accented English. "I am War Leader Drax. You will follow me to the Arena Palace. Queen Vexara awaits you." They were led through corridors carved from stone, lit by glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The architecture was brutal and functional, designed to intimidate. Tae-jin noticed weapons mounted on every wall, and Kryn warriors stood at every intersection. The Arena Palace was enormous. The floor was covered in sand, and the walls rose up in tiers where thousands of Kryn could watch. At the far end, on a throne carved from a single piece of black stone, sat Queen Vexara. She was smaller than the warriors around her, barely 6 feet tall, but her presence filled the space. Her armor was made from a white metal that seemed to glow, and her 4 arms were decorated with rings of power. Her eyes were a deep purple, and they fixed on the human delegation as they approached. "Earth sends a child to negotiate," Queen Vexara said, her voice echoing across the arena. "How curious." Ambassador Sung-Ho bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, Princess Ji-Woo comes with the full authority of Earth's unified council. We are honored by your invitation." "Honor," the Queen repeated, standing from her throne. "Let us see if humans understand honor." She raised one hand, and a Kryn warrior stepped forward from the crowd. He was massive, even for a Kryn, carrying a ceremonial spear with a blade that glowed red. "This is Noble Krath," Queen Vexara announced. "He will deliver the traditional greeting strike. If your princess is worthy, she will accept it with grace." Tae-Jin's body tensed. He had read about this custom, but the report said it was only used for warrior delegations, not diplomats. This was a test, and it was designed to humiliate Earth. Noble Krath moved forward, his 4 arms spreading wide. The spear spun in his grip, faster and faster, until it was a blur of red light. The Kryn in the stands began to chant, a low rhythmic sound that made the air vibrate. Ji-Woo stood frozen, her eyes wide. Ambassador Sung-Ho reached for her arm, but he was too far away. The spear shot forward like a missile, aimed directly at Ji-Woo's chest. Tae-Jin moved without thinking. He had trained for moments like this, where time seemed to slow down and instinct took over. He threw himself between Ji-Woo and the spear, his hands coming up in a blocking pattern he had practiced 10,000 times. His left hand deflected the spear shaft, redirecting its momentum. His right hand struck the flat of the blade, pushing it away from Ji-Woo's body. The spear whistled past, so close that it cut through the shoulder of his uniform. Tae-Jin landed in a combat stance, his body still shielding the princess. His heart pounded, but his breathing was controlled. He kept his eyes on Noble Krath, ready for a second attack. The arena had gone completely silent. Queen Vexara stood from her throne, her 4 arms spread wide. Her purple eyes were fixed on Tae-Jin, and for the first time since they arrived, she smiled. "Impossible," Noble Krath said, his voice shaking. "No outsider has ever blocked the greeting strike." The Queen descended from her throne, walking across the sand toward Tae-Jin. Every Kryn in the arena watched her, waiting. She stopped 3 feet away from him, studying him like a scientist examining a new specimen. "What is your name, human warrior?" she asked. "Officer Tae-Jin, Your Majesty," he replied, not moving from his protective stance. "Tae-Jin," she repeated, testing the sound of it. "You have done something remarkable today. You have made me interested in your species." She turned to address the arena. "Let the negotiations begin, and let no one forget what we have witnessed." This human protected his princess from every strike. As the Kryn began to chant again, this time in what sounded like approval, Tae-Jin allowed himself to relax slightly. But he noticed the way Queen Vexara continued to watch him, her purple eyes gleaming with something that looked like hunger. This mission had just become far more dangerous than he had expected. The guest quarters were carved from the same black stone as the rest of the palace. Tae-Jin checked every corner, every shadow, before allowing Ji-Woo and Ambassador Sung-Ho to enter. The rooms were large but sparse, with sleeping platforms that looked more like stone slabs than beds. "That was reckless," Ji-Woo said once they were alone. Her hands were shaking slightly, though her voice remained steady. "You could have been killed." "That's my job." "Princess," Tae-Jin replied, still scanning the room for hidden threats. Ambassador Sung-Ho sat heavily on one of the stone platforms. "The Queen changed the protocol deliberately. She wanted to test us, to see if we would break under pressure." "And now she's interested in Officer Tae-Jin?" Ji-Woo said, her tone worried. That could complicate things. A knock echoed from the door. Tae-jin moved in front of it, his hand on his weapon. "Identify yourself." "War Leader Drax," came the response. "I bring a message from Queen Vexara." Tae-jin opened the door slowly. The massive Kryn stood outside, holding a data crystal in one of his 4 hands. "The negotiations will begin tomorrow," Drax said. "But Queen Vexara has declared that all diplomatic sessions must be preceded by combat trials. This is Kryn tradition." Ambassador Sung-ho stood up quickly. "Combat trials? That wasn't part of the agreement. We came here to negotiate trade agreements, not to fight." Drax's expression didn't change. "The Queen has spoken. If Earth wishes to negotiate, Earth must prove its strength. One of you will face a Kryn warrior before each session." "This is unacceptable," Sung-ho began, but Jiwoo raised her hand. "I'll do it," she said quietly. "No," Tae-jin said immediately. "I will fight in the trials." Drax looked at him with what might have been respect. "The human warrior volunteers. Queen Vexara predicted this. Tomorrow at dawn, you will face your first opponent in the training arena." After Drax left, Ambassador Sung-ho paced the room. "This is a disaster. They're trying to wear us down, to make us leave before negotiations even begin." "Then we don't give them what they want," Tae-jin said. "I can handle their warriors." "You blocked one strike," Jiwoo said. "But actual combat with a Kryn warrior? They're stronger than humans, faster, and they have 4 arms to your 2. "I know," Tae-jin replied, "but I don't have to win. I just have to not quit." The next morning, Tae-jin stood in a smaller arena surrounded by Kryn warriors who had come to watch. The sand beneath his feet was red like rust, and the air was already hot from the rising sun. His opponent entered from the opposite side, a young Kryn warrior with bright orange markings on his gray skin. He carried 2 long blades, one in each of his upper arms. "I am Warrior Vec," the Kryn announced. "I will make this quick. Human." Queen Vexara watched from a balcony above, her purple eyes fixed on Tae-jin. The fight began with a clash of metal. Vec was fast, incredibly fast, his blades moving in patterns that would have killed most humans in seconds. But Tae-jin had spent years studying different combat styles, and he knew that speed could be countered with timing. He dodged rather than blocked, letting Vec's blades cut through empty air. He used the Kryn's momentum against him, stepping aside at the last possible moment. When he did strike back, he aimed for joints in the armor, weak points that he had memorized from the intelligence files. Vec's lower arms grabbed for him, trying to catch him in a crushing grip. Tae-jin dropped to the ground, rolled through the sand, and came up behind the Kryn. His fist struck the back of Vec's knee joint, and the warrior stumbled. The watching Kryn warriors made sounds of surprise. The fight lasted 15 minutes. Tae-jin took hits that would have broken bones, but he kept moving, kept dodging, kept striking at weak points. In the end, Vec landed a solid blow to Tae-jin's ribs that sent him to the ground. "Do you yield?" Vec asked, standing over him with both blades raised. Tae-jin pushed himself up slowly, blood dripping from his mouth. "No." He attacked again, ignoring the pain. Vec knocked him down a second time, then a third, but each time Tae-jin stood back up. Finally, Queen Vexara raised her hand. "Enough! The trial is complete!" Vec bowed to her, then offered one of his lower hands to Tae-jin. "You fight with honor, human. You did not win, but you did not surrender." Tae-jin took the hand and stood. Every part of his body hurt, but he kept his expression neutral. The pattern continued for 3 days. Before each negotiation session, Tae-jin fought a different Kryn warrior. Some were stronger than Vec, some were faster, some were more experienced. He lost every fight, but he never stayed down. Between the trials, the actual negotiations progressed slowly. Ambassador Sung Ho discussed trade routes and resource sharing, while Ji-woo presented Earth's proposals for cultural exchange. The Kryn representatives were tough negotiators, but they seemed genuinely interested in Earth's technology. On the third night, Tai-jin woke to the sound of movement outside their quarters. His combat instincts kicked in immediately. He grabbed his weapon and moved to Ji-woo's door. "Princess, stay in your room," he whispered through the door. Something moved in the shadows of the corridor. Tai-jin fired once, the plasma bolt illuminating the darkness. A Kryn assassin fell, his armor smoking. Two more attackers rushed from the opposite direction. These weren't warriors. They moved like hunters, silent and precise. Tai-jin recognized the technique from his studies. This was a professional kill team. He couldn't fight them directly. Instead, he used the environment. He shot out the light crystals in the ceiling, plunging the corridor into darkness. His eyes adjusted faster than the Kryn expected. He had trained for low-light combat. He heard their breathing, tracked their movements by sound. When one lunged at Ji-woo's door, Tai-jin was already there, redirecting the attack into the stone wall. The assassin's blade stuck in the rock, and Tai-jin used the moment to strike at the vulnerable neck joint in the armor. The second assassin was smarter. He went for Tai-jin directly, trying to eliminate the threat before going after the princess. They fought in complete darkness, blade against plasma pistol, training against instinct. Tai-jin felt the blade cut across his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He dropped his pistol and grabbed the assassin's wrist, using a joint lock technique that worked the same on 4 arms as it did on 2. The assassin went down with a crack of breaking bone. Guards arrived moments later, drawn by the sound of combat. War leader Drax looked at the 3 unconscious assassins, then at Tai-jin standing in front of Ji-woo's door, bleeding but alert. "There is a faction that opposes Earth joining the coalition," Drax said. "They will try again." "Let them try," Tai-jin replied. The next morning, despite his injuries, Tai-jin stood in the training arena for his 4th trial. His opponent was the largest Kryn he had faced yet, a veteran warrior with scars covering his armor. But before the fight could begin, Queen Vexara descended from her balcony. She walked across the sand to stand directly in front of Tai-jin. "I have been watching you closely, human warrior," she said. "You lose every trial, yet you return each morning. You defend your princess from assassins in the dark. You never complain, never ask for mercy." She circled him slowly, her 4 arms crossed in what looked like a gesture of contemplation. "I requested a private audience with you yesterday," she continued. "You refused. Why?" "My duty is to protect Princess Ji-woo," Tai-jin said. "I can't leave her side." Queen Vexara stopped in front of him again. Her purple eyes studied his face, searching for something. "Your dedication is remarkable," she said. "It reminds me why I became interested in your species." She turned to address the watching warriors. "There will be no trial today. Instead, we will proceed directly to negotiations." As she walked away, Tai-jin felt the weight of her attention on him like a physical thing. Whatever was coming next, he knew it would be more dangerous than any combat trial. The main arena was filled with thousands of Kryn. They sat in the tiered seats carved into the stone walls, their voices creating a sound like rolling thunder. Today was the most important negotiation session. Earth and the Kryn Empire would finalize the trade agreement that would secure humanity's future in the galaxy. Tai-jin stood behind Princess Ji-woo as she sat at a stone table in the center of the arena floor. Ambassador Sung Ho sat beside her, his diplomatic files spread out in front of them. Across the table sat 3 Kryn negotiators, their 4 arms moving as they reviewed documents on holographic displays. Queen Vexara watched from her throne high above, surrounded by her royal guard. The arena format was unusual, but the Kryn believed important agreements should be witnessed by the people. "Earth proposes a 20-year trade partnership," Jiwoo said, her voice amplified by speakers so the entire arena could hear. "We offer advanced computer technology and medical research in exchange for access to Kryn mining operations and military protection." The lead Kryn negotiator, an older warrior named Corvan, nodded slowly. "The terms are acceptable, but we must discuss the details of military protection. The Kryn Empire does not give its word lightly." Tae-jin scanned the crowd constantly, his training making him notice things others missed. The way certain Kryn warriors were positioned near the arena exits. The unusual number of guards in one particular section. Something felt wrong. He moved closer to Jiwoo, his hand resting on his weapon. Ambassador Sung-ho continued the discussion. "Earth understands the weight of Kryn promises. That's why we've come here in person, to show our commitment." A sound cut through the air. Metal scraping against stone. Tae-jin turned just as 20 figures dropped from the upper levels of the arena. They wore black armor without any markings, and they moved with deadly purpose. "Assassins! Get down!" Tae-jin shouted, pushing Jiwoo under the stone table. The assassins hit the arena floor and immediately spread out in a coordinated attack pattern. 10 moved toward the negotiation table, while the other 10 formed a perimeter to block any help from the Kryn guards. Tae-jin drew his plasma pistol and fired 3 times in rapid succession. 2 assassins fell, but the others kept coming. These weren't like the clumsy attackers from before. These were elite killers. Ambassador Sung-ho tried to help Jiwoo, but an assassin's blade forced him back. The Kryn negotiators drew their own weapons, but the attacking assassins drove them away from the table. Tae-jin positioned himself directly over Jiwoo's hiding spot, becoming a living shield. The first assassin to reach him wielded 2 curved blades. Tae-jin blocked the first strike with his armored forearm, feeling the impact jar his bones. He countered with a point-blank plasma shot that punched through the assassin's armor. 2 more attackers came from different angles. Tae-jin couldn't block both. He chose to take the hit from the left, letting the blade score across his armored vest while he disarmed the attacker on the right. He grabbed the assassin's weapon and used it to parry the next strike. Blood ran down his side, but he didn't move from his position over Jiwoo. From her throne, Queen Vexara made no move to help. Her guards stood ready. But she raised a hand to stop them. She wanted to see what would happen. She wanted to see what the human would do. "Keep them off the princess!" Tae-jin shouted to the Kryn negotiators. Corvan nodded and moved to help, his 4 arms wielding weapons with practiced skill. An assassin threw a plasma grenade toward the table. Tae-jin saw it arcing through the air in what felt like slow motion. He couldn't shoot it. The explosion would still harm Jiwoo. He couldn't let it land. He jumped, catching the grenade mid-air, and threw himself away from the table. The explosion caught him in the back, throwing him across the sand. His armor absorbed most of the blast, but the impact drove the air from his lungs. He forced himself to stand, his vision blurry with pain. 5 assassins remained between him and Jiwoo. They had used his moment of vulnerability to push forward. Tae-jin charged, no longer conserving energy or fighting defensively. He fought like a cornered animal, using every dirty trick he had learned in 8 years of combat. He threw sand in faces, broke joints with brutal efficiency, used fallen weapons as improvised shields. One assassin caught him with a blade to the thigh. Tae-jin grabbed the blade with his bare hand, feeling it cut into his palm, and yanked the assassin off balance. His other fist crashed into the weak point where the helmet met the neck armor. Another blade stabbed into his shoulder. He twisted, breaking the blade off in the wound, and used the trapped weapon to pull the assassin close enough to headbutt. The watching Kryn crowd had gone silent, every eye fixed on the fight. 3 assassins left. They circled him, working together now. Tae-jin's body was failing. He had lost too much blood, taken too many hits, but he couldn't fall. Not while Jiwoo was in danger. He remembered something his first combat instructor had told him. When you can't win with strength, win with will. The assassins attacked together. Taijin didn't try to fight them all. He focused on one, taking hits from the other two so he could eliminate the single target. He broke the assassin's neck with a technique that used the Kryn's own four-armed physiology against them. Two left. His vision was fading at the edges. He could barely lift his arms, but he kept himself between the assassins and Ji Woo, refusing to move. The assassins hesitated. They had seen their companions fall. They had seen this human refuse to die. Taijin spat blood onto the sand and raised his fists. "Come on!" he growled. One assassin lunged. Taijin sidestepped, using the last of his speed, and grabbed the attacker's arm. He used the momentum to throw the assassin into his companion. Both went down in a tangle of limbs. Before they could rise, Taijin was on them. He fought with pure instinct now, his body moving through patterns drilled into muscle memory. He didn't feel the blades cutting him. He didn't feel his bones breaking. He only felt the need to protect. The last assassin fell. Taijin stood swaying, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. He looked around for more threats, his eyes unfocused. When he was sure there were no more enemies, his legs finally gave out. He collapsed to his knees but kept himself upright, still positioned between Ji Woo and any potential danger. Queen Vexara rose from her throne. The entire arena watched as she descended to the sand floor, her white armor gleaming in the light. She walked through the bodies of the fallen assassins, her purple eyes never leaving Taijin. She stopped in front of him so close he could see his own reflection in her armor. 20 assassins, she said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. 20 of the most skilled killers in Kryn space, and one human warrior stood against them all. She turned to address the crowd. I have lived for 80 cycles. I have seen countless warriors from 100 different species. But I have never seen dedication like this. I have never seen someone protect another from every single strike, no matter the cost to themselves. She raised all four arms high. This human has demonstrated the highest warrior's virtue. By the ancient laws of the Kryn Empire, I claim him. Taijin belongs to me now. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices shaking the arena. Ji Woo crawled out from under the table, tears streaming down her face. No, she said. You can't. He's ours. He's Earth's. Queen Vexara looked down at her. The law is clear. A warrior who shows supreme valor may be claimed by the monarch. It is done. Taijin tried to speak, to protest, but his body finally failed him. He fell forward onto the sand, unconscious. The last thing he heard was Ji Woo's voice, arguing with the queen, refusing to give up. When Taijin woke, he was in a medical facility. Kryn doctors had treated his wounds with technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. His body was covered in healing gel and wrapped in regenerative bandages. War leader Drax stood at the foot of his bed. You have caused quite a problem, human. The Queen's claim has created a diplomatic crisis, but you also saved the princess and proved Earth's worth. The Kryn people are calling you a hero. Taijin closed his eyes. He had done his job. He had protected Ji Woo, but the cost was higher than he ever imagined. He belonged to the Queen now, and he had no idea what that meant. Taijin spent 2 days in the medical facility before he could stand without pain. The Kryn healing technology was remarkable, but it couldn't fix everything instantly. His body needed time to recover from the damage. On the 3rd day, war leader Drax escorted him to a private meeting room. Princess Ji Woo and Ambassador Sung Ho were already there, along with Queen Vexara and several Kryn officials. Officer Taijin, Ji Woo said, standing when he entered. Are you well enough to be here? I'm fine, Princess, he replied, though his movements were still careful. He noticed the tension in the room immediately. This was not a friendly meeting. Queen Vexara sat at the head of a long stone table, her 4 arms resting on the armrests of her chair. "Please sit, Taejin. We have much to discuss." He remained standing. "Your Majesty, I must respectfully decline your claim. I serve Earth and Princess Jiwoo. That is where my duty lies." The Queen smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I admire your loyalty, but Kryn law is absolute. When a warrior demonstrates supreme valor in defense of another, the monarch may claim that warrior for the empire. This law has existed for 1,000 years. Ambassador Sung Ho leaned forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, Officer Taejin is not a Kryn citizen. He cannot be bound by your laws. He fought in my arena, under my sky, witnessed by my people," the Queen countered. "That makes him subject to Kryn law. The claim is valid." Jiwoo's hands clenched into fists on the table. "This is wrong. You're trying to take him away from us because he proved humans can be strong. You're afraid of what that means." The room went very quiet. Speaking to a Kryn queen that way could be dangerous. But Vexara only tilted her head, studying Jiwoo with interest. "You have courage, Princess. You speak truth even when it puts you at risk. I respect that." She stood, walking slowly around the table. "But you misunderstand my intentions. I am not afraid of human strength. I am impressed by it. That is why I want Taejin to serve the Empire." "You want to use him," Jiwoo said, "to learn his techniques, to understand how humans fight." "Yes," Vexara said simply. "Is that so terrible? Knowledge shared between species makes us all stronger." Taejin spoke carefully. "What would this claim mean, Your Majesty? What would you require of me?" The Queen turned to face him. "You would serve in my royal guard. You would train my warriors in human combat methods. You would advise me on military strategy. And you would remain on the Kryn homeworld for the rest of your life." "Unacceptable," Jiwoo said immediately. "He's not your property. You can't keep him here forever." Ambassador Sung Ho held up a hand. "Perhaps we can find a compromise. What if Officer Taejin serves the Kryn Empire for a limited time? A year, perhaps 2, then he would be free to return to Earth." Queen Vexara considered this. "A limited term of service. Interesting, but if I agree to this, I would want something in return. I would want the trade agreement expanded to include military cooperation between our species." "That would require approval from Earth's Unified Council," Sung Ho said. "Then get it," the Queen replied, "or Taejin stays here permanently under Kryn law." The negotiations continued for hours. Taejin listened as they argued about the terms, about timelines, about what constitutes military cooperation versus military alliance. His future was being decided by diplomats and politicians, and he had almost no say in it. Finally, Jiwoo asked for a private moment with Taejin. The Kryn officials left the room, though Vexara hesitated before following them out. "I'm trying to get you out of this," Jiwoo said once they were alone. "But the Queen is determined. She won't back down." "I know," Taejin said, "and I understand why. She's not doing this out of cruelty." Jiwoo looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "During my recovery, I talked to the medical staff. They're worried about something. There are rumors of attacks on Kryn border worlds, ships disappearing, colonies going silent." He sat down carefully. "The Queen needs new strategies, new ways of thinking. Traditional Kryn tactics aren't working against whatever threat they're facing." Ambassador Sung Ho nodded slowly. "I heard similar rumors from the negotiators. They wouldn't give details, but they seemed genuinely concerned." "So she wants me to train her warriors," Taejin said, "to teach them how humans adapt and improvise. It's not about owning me, it's about survival." "That doesn't make it right," Jiwoo insisted. "You shouldn't have to sacrifice your life for their problems." Taejin was quiet for a moment. You remember why I joined security services, Princess? I wanted to protect people, not just Earth people, but anyone who needed protecting. If the Kryn Empire falls to some unknown enemy, millions will die. Maybe billions. How can I refuse to help prevent that? You're too noble for your own good, Jiwoo said. But her voice was soft. I learned that from watching you, Taijin replied. You came here knowing it was dangerous. You stood up to the Queen when it would have been easier to stay silent. You argue for my freedom even though it could damage the trade agreement. That's what duty looks like. They returned to the negotiation table. Queen Vexara was waiting, her purple eyes watching them closely. I'll accept the claim, Taijin said before anyone else could speak. I'll serve the Kryn Empire for 1 year. I'll train your warriors and help develop new strategies. But I have conditions. The Queen leaned back in her chair. Name them. First, the trade agreement goes forward as originally planned, with the military cooperation Ambassador Sung Ho suggested. Second, I want regular communication with Earth. Third, if this unknown threat you're worried about is defeated before the year is up, I return home immediately. Vexara's eyes widened slightly. You know about the enemy. I can guess, Taijin said. And I think you need human thinking, not because we're stronger than Kryn, but because we approach problems differently. We had to. We were weak compared to most species, so we learned to be clever. The Queen stood and walked to him. She extended one of her 4 hands. You understand more than I expected. I accept your conditions, Taijin of Earth. For 1 year, you will serve the Kryn Empire as a warrior and advisor. He took her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. I have one question, Your Majesty. Why me specifically? You could have claimed any warrior. Vexara smiled. Because when you stood over Princess Jiwoo, bleeding and broken, refusing to fall despite facing impossible odds, you reminded me of something I had forgotten. The greatest warriors are not those who win every fight. They are those who refuse to abandon what they protect, no matter the cost. She released his hand. That kind of dedication cannot be taught, but perhaps your methods can be, and that will be enough to save my people. Jiwoo stepped forward. I want to make something clear, Your Majesty. Officer Taijin is still under Earth's authority. He's agreeing to this as a loan, not a transfer of service. After 1 year, he comes home. Agreed, the Queen said. Though I suspect after working with my warriors, he might choose to stay longer. Don't count on it, Jiwoo replied. That evening, Taijin stood on a balcony overlooking the Kryn capital city. The red sun was setting, casting everything in shades of crimson and gold. Princess Jiwoo found him there. I'm sorry, she said. This isn't what you signed up for. Neither was protecting you, Taijin said. But it turned out to be the most important thing I've ever done. Maybe this will be too. When you come back to Earth, Jiwoo said, there will be a position waiting for you, a better one than security officer. We'll see if I survive the year first, he replied with a slight smile. You will, she said with certainty, because you never quit. That's who you are. She left him alone with his thoughts. Taijin looked up at the alien stars and wondered what the next year would bring. He had agreed to train warriors, to share human methods of combat and strategy, but he suspected that Queen Vexara wanted something more. She wanted to understand what made humans dangerous, despite their physical weaknesses. She wanted to learn what allowed one human to stand against 20 assassins and refuse to fall. And somehow, Taijin would have to find a way to teach that. To show the Kryn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength or technology. It was the stubborn refusal to give up, even when giving up made perfect sense. 3 months had passed since Taijin began training the Kryn Royal Guard. The work was harder than any combat he had ever faced. The Kryn were proud warriors who had used the same tactics for centuries. Convincing them to try new methods required patience and repeated demonstrations. He stood in the training arena, watching 50 Kryn warriors practice the formations he had taught them. Instead of the traditional charge that relied on overwhelming strength, they moved in coordinated groups. They covered each other's weaknesses, adapted to changing situations, and used terrain to their advantage. "They're improving," War Leader Drax said, standing beside him. Over the months, Drax had become something close to a friend. "But they still struggle with improvisation." "That's because improvisation goes against everything they've been taught," Tae-Jin replied. "Kryn culture values honor and tradition. Asking them to abandon planned tactics in the middle of a fight feels like cheating to them." "And yet, you've made progress," Queen Vexara said, approaching from behind. She often appeared without warning, observing the training sessions. "My guards think differently now. They question orders when those orders don't make tactical sense. Some of my older advisors are not pleased." "Progress always upsets someone," Tae-Jin said. He had learned to speak more casually with the Queen over the months. She seemed to prefer honesty over formal respect. "Come," she said. "We need to talk privately." They walked to her strategy room, a chamber filled with holographic displays showing the Kryn Empire's territory. Tae-Jin noticed immediately that several border systems were marked in red. "The attacks have increased," Vexara said, activating one of the displays. 3 more colonies have gone silent in the past week. Whatever is out there, it's getting bolder." Tae-Jin studied the pattern of attacks. "They're testing your defenses, learning your response patterns. Classic probe behavior before a larger invasion. That's what my military advisors say. But our traditional response, sending overwhelming force, has failed repeatedly. The enemy disappears before our fleets arrive, then strikes somewhere else." She looked at him. "I need your human perspective. What would you do?" Tae-Jin thought carefully. "You're reacting instead of anticipating. The enemy knows you'll send fleets, so they use that against you. Instead, you need to be unpredictable. Explain. Set traps. Leave systems looking vulnerable, but have rapid response teams hidden nearby. Vary your patrol patterns so they can't predict where your ships will be. Force them to fight on your terms, not theirs." Vexara nodded slowly. "Unconventional. Risky. Exactly the kind of thinking we need." She tapped the display. "There's a colony on the border, System K-47. Intelligence suggests it will be the next target. I want you to lead a defense force there." "Me?" Tae-Jin was surprised. "Your Majesty, I'm a trainer, not a commander." "You're a warrior who thinks differently," she corrected. "I'm giving you a mixed force, Kryn veterans and human volunteers from Earth's military who arrived last week as part of the expanded cooperation agreement. Show me if your methods actually work in combat." 2 days later, Tae-Jin stood on the bridge of a Kryn warship in orbit above Colony K-47. His force consisted of 200 Kryn warriors and 50 human soldiers. The humans had been eager to work with him, having heard stories about the officer who stood against 20 assassins. Lieutenant Minna, the ranking human officer, approached him. "Sir, we've deployed sensor drones in the pattern you requested. If anything enters the system, we'll know immediately." "Good," Tae-Jin said. "Make sure the Kryn teams understand the plan. When the enemy arrives, we don't charge directly at them. We make them think we're following traditional tactics, then we adapt." "Some of the Kryn warriors are uncomfortable with the deception," Minna said quietly. "They think it's dishonorable." "War isn't about honor," Tae-Jin replied. "It's about protecting people. Once they understand that, the rest becomes easier." The attack came 30 hours later. Sensors detected 15 ships entering the system, moving in a formation that suggested coordination and intelligence. The enemy vessels were organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be living armor. "The swarm," Drax said from the tactical station. "We've encountered them before. They operate as a hive mind, adapting to whatever tactics we use against them. Perfect, Tae-jin said. A hive mind expects patterns, so we don't give them any. He opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, execute approach pattern Gamma. Remember your training. Stay flexible, watch for signals, and don't get predictable. The Kryn and human forces moved forward in loose formation. The swarm ships responded exactly as expected, positioning themselves to counter a traditional Kryn charge. But instead of charging, Tae-jin's forces split into multiple smaller groups, each one moving independently. The swarm hesitated, confused by the unconventional approach. That moment of confusion was all Tae-jin needed. All groups. Engage at will. Focus fire on their command nodes. He had studied the intelligence reports carefully. The swarm ships had central control nodes that coordinated their movements. Destroy those, and the individual ships became less effective. The battle became chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Kryn warriors worked alongside human soldiers, covering each other's weaknesses. When the swarm adapted to one tactic, the mixed forces switched to something completely different. They used combined arms strategies that the hive mind couldn't predict. A swarm ship broke through toward the colony. Tae-jin's ship moved to intercept, firing precisely at the control node he had identified. The enemy vessel shuddered and lost coordination with the rest of its fleet. "They're retreating," Minna called out. "Enemy forces withdrawing from the system." Tae-jin watched the swarm ships disappear into faster-than-light travel. "Damage report." "Minimal casualties," Drax said, surprise evident in his voice. 3 ships damaged, no losses. In traditional engagements with the swarm, we usually lose 30% of our forces. "That's because traditional tactics are predictable," Tae-jin said. "The swarm adapts to patterns. We won by not having a pattern." News of the victory spread quickly through the Kryn Empire. For the first time, someone had defeated the swarm without massive losses. Queen Vex'ara personally traveled to K-47 to meet with Tae-jin and his forces. "You did it," she said, walking with him through the colony that his forces had saved. "You proved that human methods work against an enemy we couldn't defeat." "Not human methods," Tae-jin corrected. "Combined methods. The Kryn warriors adapted and learned. The humans learned from Kryn's strength and discipline. Together, we became something neither species could achieve alone." The queen stopped and turned to face him. "I owe you an apology, Tae-jin. When I claimed you, I thought I was taking something from Earth to benefit the Kryn, but what you've really done is build a bridge between our species." She addressed the assembled warriors, both Kryn and human. "I declare this day to mark a new era of cooperation between the Kryn Empire and Earth. Let all know that we are stronger together than apart." The warriors cheered, 4 armed and 2 armed soldiers standing side by side. Later, in a private meeting, Queen Vex'ara made an announcement. "Your year of service is not yet complete, but the debt is paid. The enemy has been identified and countered. According to our agreement, you are free to return to Earth." Tae-jin nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "But before you go," she continued, "I want to say something publicly." She led him to the grand arena where he had first fought to protect Princess Jiwoo. Thousands of Kryn filled the seats, and the event was broadcast across the empire. Queen Vex'ara stood at the center of the arena, with Tae-jin beside her. "When I claimed this warrior," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner, "I believed I was taking possession of something valuable. I was wrong. I claimed you as mine, Tae-jin of Earth. But you have proven that the best of humanity cannot be owned, only partnered with." She raised all 4 arms high. "I release you from my claim. You are free to return to Earth with my gratitude and the friendship of the Kryn people." The crowd erupted in cheers. Tae-jin was surprised to see many Kryn warriors saluting him in the traditional way, a sign of deep respect. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said. "It's been an honor to serve." A week later, Tae-jin stood in the landing bay of an Earth transport ship. His belongings were packed, and he was ready to go home. But he wasn't leaving alone. 20 Kryn warriors had volunteered to train on Earth, continuing the exchange program he had started. War leader Drax was among them. "Someone needs to make sure you humans don't teach our people too many bad habits," he said with what might have been a Kryn smile. The transport took him back to Earth orbit. When he stepped off the ship at the orbital station, Princess Jiwoo was waiting for him. "Welcome home, Officer Tae-jin," she said formally. Then she smiled. "Though you're not going to be an officer much longer." "Your Majesty?" He was surprised to see she now wore the formal robes of a council member. "I've been promoted too," she explained. "And one of my first acts was to create a new position, Chief of Interspecies Security. It's a role that requires someone who understands different species, who can work with anyone, and who never gives up no matter the odds." She extended her hand. "The job is yours if you want it." Tae-jin thought about everything that had happened. He had gone from a simple security officer to someone who had changed the relationship between two species. He had proven that humans could stand alongside the strongest warriors in the galaxy. He took her hand. "I accept." 3 months later, Tae-jin stood in a new office overlooking Earth. His role involved coordinating security for all human diplomatic missions, training programs with allied species, and developing defensive strategies for humanity's future in the galaxy. On his desk was a message from Queen Vexara. The joint human-Kryn forces had won 3 more battles against the swarm. The tactics he developed were being taught to warriors across multiple species. The coalition was stronger because humans had proven they belonged. He had protected Princess Jiwoo from every strike that day in the arena. That single act of dedication had changed everything. It had earned the respect of a warrior queen, forged an alliance between species, and secured humanity's place among the stars. Tae-jin looked at the Earth below, then at the stars above. Somewhere out there, former enemies were becoming friends. Former traditions were evolving into new strategies. And humanity was no longer seen as weak newcomers, but as valuable partners. He had done his duty. He had protected those who needed protecting. And in doing so, he had helped humanity find its true strength, not in matching other species physically, but in bringing them together in ways no one else could. The future was uncertain, but Tae-jin faced it the same way he faced everything, with determination, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to give up. It was the human way. And now, it was becoming the galactic way, too.